Well, good morning, everybody. I am Veronica Murray, and I am the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Manager for the Department of Consumer and Business Services, also the Affirmative Action Representative. It's a great pleasure to welcome all of you to our annual celebration of Black History Month. And in addition to our employees right now here, there are other employees that we have in the field offices in rural area. We want to also welcome them to this event. We also have guests from our partners agencies and our community partners and stakeholders. Thank you for being here with us. It means a lot. Today, we are here to celebrate a vital role that Blacks have played in the development and progress of the nation and the world throughout history. The things have, how many inventions have passed, how many improvements to our way of living have happened because of Blacks. In America, over 41.1 million, equal to 12.4%, identify themselves as Black. Even that, with those numbers, the support and the invention and the creativity that Black have bring to the community and the world have overpassed those numbers. So for this, let us recognize our employees, our colleagues, our partners, our stakeholders, and let's start making the pendulum move. It's with my pleasure to introduce my director, or our director, Andrew Stolfi.
Thank you, Veronica, and good morning, everyone. I'm Andrew Stolfi, the DCBS director, and my pleasure to be here this morning with everyone. And thank you, Veronica, for framing the importance of our gathering here today so well. Glad to see so many of our friends from other agencies as well. I saw Revenue, BOLI, PERS, SOS, and ELD on the list. And thank you so much for being with us today and for joining in this important conversation. And I'm not going to talk for very long here at all because I really want to hear from Dr. Brown, who I have the very distinct pleasure of introducing to everyone. So Dr. Brown was born and raised in Louisiana. He's one of 7 siblings. I'm sure there's lots of great stories you could share about growing up in a household that large. And at 17, he enlisted in the United States Navy. He's got a Bachelor of Arts in Youth Ministry from Eastern University in Pennsylvania, which I believe is right outside of Philadelphia. And I spent my childhood a little bit north of there, outside of Stroudsburg, so not too far away from there. He's got a master's in educational leadership from Lewis and Clark College in Portland. I was the first African-American to earn a doctorate of education in organizational leadership and development from the University of Portland. As a DEI educational consultant and policy advisor, he enjoys serving on boards and volunteering with the International Dyslexia Association, as education chairperson for the Salem-Keizer NAACP, as vice chair for the City of Salem Budget Committee, as Chemeketa Criminal Justice Advisory, and on the Salem Human Rights Commission. So, Dr. Brown, thank you so very much for joining us today. I'm really looking forward to hearing your thoughts and to engaging on some great questions. So without any further ado, the floor is now yours.
Thank you so much. And yeah, there are quite a few stories of growing up in a household with 7 of us. So let's just say that. There was never a boring moment in my house. So I do find it an honor to be in the space today. So to Ms. Veronica Murray, the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Manager, and to her entire team here at the Department of Consumer and Business Services, thank you. I am indeed humbled to be here. Your partnership matters to me. You matter to me, and I see you. So thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share in this space and to be present with everyone. To my parents, that's them right over my shoulder. They are still in the beautiful state of Louisiana. And today, they still continue to provide me with the wisdom and the love I need to be better today than I was on yesterday. And on behalf of those individuals who look like me, who have gone before me to pave the way, and are now cheering me on from the upper room as a cloud of witnesses. So many names were not known, and faces were not seen, and yet they persevered. And it is because of their blood and their sacrifice, the blood of their resiliency, and the overcoming power in it, it runs through my veins today. Yes, my beautifully bold and unapologetically Black ancestors, I honor you today. And as my parents often remind me, son, count your blessings and name them one by one and see what the Lord has done. Yes, it is good to be here, and it's good to be in this space, and it's good to be alive. Well, let's get into it. My encouragement to everyone that's here, if you're taking notes, if there are some things that catch your attention, I encourage you to write those down. If there are some things that you would like to talk about afterwards, we're going to have a discussion. So please feel free to show up, be present, bring all of your authentic selves into this space. Let's have a good time this morning. Where do you find yourself today? Take a quick analysis. Look in the mirror. Look over your shoulder. Where are you right now? What are you feeling? How are you doing on this beautiful, cold Thursday morning? Yes, I'm asking you, you who are listening to me, how are you doing today, right now in this moment? Last month, we paid tribute to the late and great Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Our current American and political culture typically gets really sentimental in January. You know, it's a whole new year. Some of us may have spent time with our loved ones. Many people reflect in January. People create goals and vision boards. Some even buy expensive workout machines and gear. And we even pause for a few minutes to listen to a speech given on August the 28th, 1963, entitled, I Have a Dream. We're often very quite verbose about Dr. King's ideals, his achievements, and his words of inspiration. Rarely do we pause long enough to talk about Dr. King's faith in God. Within that speech that he gave on that particular day, he tells this particular story. Just then, a religious scholar, he stood up with a question to test Jesus. Teacher, what do I need to do to get eternal life? Jesus answered, what's written in God's law? How do you interpret it? The scholar said, well, that you shall love the Lord God with all your passion and prayer and muscle and intelligence, and that you should love your neighbor as well as yourself. Jesus said, good answer. If you do that, you'll live. The scholar, looking for a loophole, he asked another question. And just how would I define my neighbor? Who is my neighbor? Jesus answered him by telling him a story. There was once a man traveling from Jerusalem to Jericho, and on the way, he was attacked by robbers. They took his clothes, they beat him up, and went off leaving him half dead. Luckily, a priest was on his way down that same road, but when he saw him, he quickly changed to the other side of the road and continued on his journey. Then a Levite, a religious man, he showed up. He also avoided this injured man. And then a Samaritan traveling on the same road, when he saw the man's condition, his heart went out to him. He gave him first aid, disinfecting and bandaging his wounds. Then he lifted him up and placed him on his donkey, led him to an inn, and made him comfortable. And the next morning, he took out 2 silver coins and gave them to the innkeeper, saying, take care of him. If it cost any more, put it on my bill. I'll pay you on the way back. What do you think? Which of these three became a neighbor to the man attacked by robbers? The one who treated him kindly, the religious scholar responded. And Jesus quickly said, go and do the same. So that's a story that Dr. King shared in the speech he gave several decades ago. And my assignment today is to just ask a series of questions to allow us to think together, to maybe go outside the box. So again, where do you find yourself today? Exactly, what is your assignment? Do you know it? When someone is hurt, do you help them? When someone is unseen, do you acknowledge their presence? When there's a barrier blocking my path, will you move it or will you add to it and make my journey all the more difficult? When there's a policy to help people who look like me, will you support the policy or will you vote against it? When a job needs to be filled, will you select a candidate that comes from underrepresented communities or will you uphold the status quo? Where do you find yourself today, right now in this moment? And what is your assignment? My hope today is that those of us that are listening will lean into this conversation to hear the message between the lines. Many of us are aware that Black history, it's America's history. For without the brilliance of Black inventors, educators, preachers, farmers, lawyers, doctors, artists, politicians, bankers, scientists, engineers, and authors, America will look quite different without the sacrifice of those Black Americans. For example, the next time you go to sleep tonight, you lie in your bed or you change the linens on your bed, that fitted sheet, that's Miss Bertha Berman. You can thank her. Or maybe you have a story similar to mine where you or a loved one needed some blood. Remember to thank Mr. Charles Drew for developing techniques for blood storage. And you know that disposable syringe? Well, that's another Black inventor by the name of Mr. Phil Brooks. Or the next time you get on an elevator, you know, whether you're going up or down, and you see those doors slowly close, that's Mr. Alexander Miles. Or maybe you've had laser surgery to remove cataracts from your eyes. Well, you can thank Dr. Patricia Bath. From the stoplight to the fountain pen, to the fire escape ladder, to the blue mailbox on the corner, the dry cleaning process for clothes, refrigerated trucks, the home security with TV surveillance in your home and mine, all Black people. The mop, the electric heater, the golf tee, and let's not forget all those potato chips you and myself probably ate during the Super Bowl. The potato chips, well, that's Mr. George Crumb, 1853. I agree, and hopefully you do too, that Black history is America's history. Mr. Ray Charles, rather than saying it, he sang it this way. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties, above the fruited plain. But now wait a minute, I'm talking about America, sweet America. You know, God didn't shed his grace on thee. He crowned thy good, yes he did, in brotherhood, from sea to shining sea. God shed his grace on thee. Interesting concept. You, me, us, a brotherhood, a group of colleagues working together, sisterhood even, unity, a bond, a oneness, a togetherness, a wholeness. So again, where do you find yourself today? And what is your assignment? The intersectionality of race and racism, how it's connected, it asserts the ideology that the master narrative in storytelling is told by the dominant voice, rather than creating space to hear from people of color, from people who have been oppressed, set aside, unseen, marginalized, and forgotten. Is there space for someone that looks like me at the decision-making table? Is there space? An ally, some of us like that term, and some of us may think that that is our assignment. An ally has to not only make space at that table, but must be willing to give up their seat to make room for somebody else. Just because someone voted for President Obama does not make them an ally. Hear me well, just because you voted for him does not make you an ally. Nor wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt. That doesn't make one an ally either. You see, being an ally requires work. It requires diligence and sacrifice, and acknowledging this country's racist past, even Oregon's racist history. Allyship is a process, and everyone has more to learn, including me. Being a white ally acknowledges the limits of one's education and what you may think you know about someone else's lived experiences. A white ally must act and cannot and never remain silent, but confronts and interrupts racism every day. Every day. That's what an ally does. A white ally must seek to deconstruct institutional racism and live in a way that challenges systemic oppression at the risk of being uncomfortable and experiencing some of the oppression that people like me go through on a daily basis. Robin DiAngelo, some of us probably know her, we've read some of her work. In the skin that she's in as a white lady, this is what she said. In the United States, being a white ally is understanding your privilege. She believes that white privilege is the lived experience of greater social and political access, representation and entitlement and material and economic security that people consider who are white. They got all of that from a result of white supremacy. Being a white ally means creating authentic relationships with both people of color and also with white people in order to challenge them in their thinking about race. White allies are to challenge others' thinking about race. White allies don't have it all figured out, and that's okay. But they are committed to not remaining silent. They are committed to not standing along the sidelines. White allies do not hold off until tomorrow. No, they believe in acting today to be better informed for the many tomorrows that are yet to come. And yes, although some white people are oppressed on the basis of class, gender, sexual orientation, ability, religion, culture, ethnicity, it is still true that all white people benefit from white privilege in various ways. In essence, Deangelo says, you must ask yourself, what does it mean to be white? How has being white shaped my life? For me, research informs me that white privilege is considered to be a system of advantages and benefits that are normally received without merit and based entirely on race. People of color are the victims of white privilege and the systemic oppression that comes with it. However, if people of color are affirmed in their racial identities and given space to share their stories, showing up in their authentic selves, if they're given that space, the ideology of racism is examined and racist injuries are named out loud, and victims of racism, they can find their voice. They can find their voice in a space that is created by white allyship. Yes, seeing all of me so I can find my voice. In the current political environment we live in, and what some scholars refer to as a post-racial America, race is often wrongly thought to be unconnected, or at best, a problem of some racist individuals, rather than a systemic and structural problem. You know, if people just ignore it, it'll just go away. If we don't talk about it, it'll just disappear. How has that worked for us? What is your assignment? What is your assignment today? The drum major instinct is one of Dr. King's finest and most prophetic sermons. He preached it 2 months before his assassination on February the 4th of 1968, and he preached it at Atlanta's Ebenezer Baptist Church, where he was the co-pastor with his dad. On that particular Sunday, Dr. King preached on virtues of service and the false ideals of greatness. That particular sermon was an adaptation from a 1949 homily by James Wallace Hamilton. Mr. Hamilton was a prominent white liberal Methodist minister. Identical to Mr. Hamilton, Dr. King draws his text from another biblical account, detailing a conversation between Jesus and his apostles, John and James. I know this may seem like a church service, but trust me, it's not about church. It's all about history. These two brothers, as Jesus was talking, they asked to sit next to him in heaven. Jesus tells them, well, that favor is not for me to give, but it is only earned by committing your lives and serving others. You see, the need to be upfront and noticed is the drum major instinct. It is a selfish request motivated by a need to stand out, to be the exception, to be great, to be important, to be significant, and to be first. And I must confess, y'all, there have been times in my life that I've wanted to be first, not realizing that the opposite is true. True servitude is not being first. I agree with Dr. King's conclusion. And by giving that definition of greatness, it means that everybody can be great because everybody can serve. In his own words, he says, you don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree to serve. You don't have to know about Plato, Aristotle to serve. You don't have to know Einstein's theory or relativity to serve. You don't have to know the second theory of thermodynamics and physics to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love, and you can be that particular servant who serves others, and you can be a drum major. So what is your assignment today? Is it an ally or maybe a drum major? Or perhaps you just kind of waiting to see, well, let me just wait to see how Dr. Brown defines what's a gap dweller before you make a decision. I would like to share a personal story with you in this particular space, to be vulnerable, to share, because that's what it's all about. It's agreeing to show up in a space as your authentic selves, hoping and believing that your colleague or a stakeholder, a community member, will see you and be there for you. And here's a lived experience that I've had, and I wrote it down in my diary years ago, and I thought it would be appropriate to share with you. There I sat quietly, staring out of the window, looking toward the Cascades. Today they never look so glorious. Or maybe they've always looked this way and I just never noticed. But today things just feel different. Today I notice everything. And guess where I'm sitting? I'm not sitting in a park with swing sets or ponds. There are no runners passing by. And what I'm sitting in is definitely not a comfy recliner, not even close. Today, I'm sitting in a hospital hallway in a wheelchair nonetheless. I sit quietly reflecting on what has taken place in the past 72 hours. You see, a few days ago, I was rushed to the hospital again. But this time the trip felt different. Or maybe it was the same as before, and I'd just become accustomed to the interior. Going to the hospital, for me, it wasn't scary or weird or anything, because I had been inside these walls dozens and dozens of times. I'm in my room. I'm on the 7th floor. And you know, 7 is my favorite number. David, my doctor, has given me a somewhat kinda, maybe vague prognosis of my health status. Out of everything he said, I only remember one word, and that was the word cancer. Cancer? It wasn't until days later I came to find out that the 7th floor was actually the cancer ward. David said, you're going to have to go through some chemo medication, Irvin, because we're not sure if it's going to work. You're not sure if it's going to work, but I need to take it and go through it anyway? It didn't matter to me because I trusted David. He and I had become 7th floor buddies. We were now on a first name basis. I had been in there for so long. I went through the chemo and all the medication, but there was no change. My condition worsened. David came back the next day and said, Irvin, your liver is beginning to swell and we'll need to do a liver biopsy. I agreed because I trusted David. That biopsy was one of the most horrible experiences ever. Somewhere between the start of the surgery and the end of it, y'all, I woke up. I woke up in the middle of it. I moaned and groaned in severe pain. I recall the surgeon asking, can you feel that? I nodded with tears in my eyes, and I slowly slipped into unconsciousness. After that episode, I woke back up in my room with the familiar face of my sister. I was happy to see her, and right beside her was David. He gave us the latest report and said the results from the biopsy will be ready soon, Irvin, in about a few hours or so. Well, somewhere between ready and those few hours, my kidneys decided to allow significant amounts of protein to filter through them. When David told me the news, I could see on his face he was very perturbed and had a complex look of bewilderment. He said, we'll get through this, Irvin. The liver specialist is on his way. We waited. I waited. The liver specialist came with his report. He didn't bother with small talk, but simply stated, you have a liver disease, Mr. Brown. Or maybe he did talk more to me, but that's all I remember. I do remember what happened next, though. The machines I was hooked up, all the machines I was hooked up to, they began to make loud and crazy noises. And David began doing more blood tests and x-rays. My sister consistently spoke these words, Irvin, we're going to get through this. Irvin, I'm still praying. Irvin, God is in control. And again, I waited and I waited. David came back later with more news about the blood work and all the x-rays. He said, Irvin, I don't understand this, but your organs, they're no longer working in harmony with each other. I waited for him to explain. I waited. He said within a couple of days, your liver began to increase in its size, and it's not functioning as a healthy liver. Your kidneys are shutting down, and now your heart has developed a murmur. And without those organs working together as one unit, Irvin, you're no longer producing blood. Again, the mask of bewilderment on David's face. This mask covered every inch of his face. Then he said something to me that no patient wants to hear from their doctor. David said, Irvin, I don't know what to do. He left the room. I sat and I waited. My sister cried, but I held back all the tears. Within 24 hours, my body had become its own enemy, and I felt powerless to change anything. Even the outcome, which I could feel, was getting closer than ever. Later that day, David did return, but not alone. He came with the heart surgeon, the liver specialist, the kidney doctor, the hematologist. He came with everybody, standing room only in Irvin's room. And as if I wasn't in the room, they began to exchange words about the next order of procedure for my body, as they discussed. One by one, they stated their medical case and what should be done first. My sister and close friend were all listening in. From the look on their faces, I could tell they were getting a headache from all of this. Eventually, they all left the room. Now, fast forward to me sitting in that wheelchair, or I was looking at the mountains, the Cascades. Fast forward to there. And just like clockwork, or as if fate would have it, David comes walking toward me. He doesn't stand over me at all. He actually kneels down and gets to my level. I said, David, what should I do? What do I do first? This time, David looked convinced. Or maybe he's always looked that way and I just didn't notice. He said, Irvin, if you don't have a blood transfusion, you will die. A blood transfusion, you will die. I said to David, you're saying the opposite of what all those other experts said. David said, whatever you decide to do, Irvin, I'll be here. You see, the inventions that our country enjoys, a lot of inventions come from a variety of people we have never seen, never heard, or they are a member of a particular race that we rarely ever talk about, or maybe we don't have space for. But I knew then and now that I am who I am because of those individuals who have paved the way for me to be here. You know, being a gap dweller is always about the other person. It's always about the other. Being a gap dweller does not come with a summer's parade, nor yellow daffodils on a spring day. Being a gap dweller does not come from a desire to be first or even last. A gap dweller does not desire anything in of itself. Being a gap dweller is not something you choose at all, but rather it chooses you. America, our America, is trying once again to rewrite its history and to purposely leave out people who look like me. In my closing, to my allies, to my drum majors, and those of you that are gap dwellers, I leave you with these words from Langston Hughes. I too sing America. I am the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes, but I laugh and I eat well and I grow strong because tomorrow, I'll be at the table when company comes. Nobody'll dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I too am America. For those of you listening to my voice, thinking, pondering, to my colleagues that are here, to the managers that are present, the directors, the policy analysts, teachers, politicians, business owners, parents, officers, blue and white collar workers, wherever you find yourself today in whatever trade it may be, lawyers and doctors, administrators, America, oh America, what is your assignment? Whether it be a gap dweller, a drum major, or even an ally, find your assignment and move forward with an integrity and compassion. Because at the end of the day, it's all about all of us and the legacy that we're creating and what we're leaving behind. Level up and take somebody with you because we are all America. Thank you, and I bid you Godspeed. And I think I'm going to turn this back over into the hands of Manager Murray for part two.
Part two. Oh, there's an echo somewhere. Dr. Brown, we have some questions that when we announced that you were coming, that was sent to us. So okay. I will start by asking a few of those questions. And if somebody has any other question, please put it on the chat and we will be looking at those. The first question that was sent to us is, what is your career story and what are the challenges you have faced with respect to diversity during your career?
When I think about my career, it's been interesting to say the least, probably like a lot of us here on this particular meeting together. You know, born and raised in Louisiana, you know, my parents, who I love dearly, for those of you who may not even know this, my parents and my grandparents are not too far removed from slavery. In essence, I grew up on a plantation. Yes, I did. I grew up on a plantation in Louisiana. And I understand what it's like to come from a place of poverty. I understand what it's like to be forgotten or excluded or not seen. I understand it and I get it. I understand racism. I understand what it feels like to go through discrimination or microaggressions, micro assaults, micro insults, micro invalidations, you name it. My career and where I'm at has been shaped by the influence and the sacrifices of people like my parents. My dad was in the military as a young man, and I was surrounded by uncles who were in the military. My dad had to quit school in the 6th grade to support his family. And he recently retired from being a carpenter for 45 plus years. You know, he is a man amongst men. And what he has done and continues to do informs my life, because although I am a highly educated person, my dad and my mom who worked multiple jobs, they believed in education. They believed in putting their kids first. They believed in having a work ethic that mattered. And I believe that is not only because of the skin that they are in, but it's also the blood that's in their veins. And so when I think about my career choices, whether it's being in the military or today as a policy advisor or working alongside politicians, what is most challenging, especially in Oregon State, is that racism is still alive here. It has not left. It is in the DNA of this particular state and the fabric. And it's only until we can peel back the layers and be at a table to discuss, agree to disagree, but not be disagreeable. And it is up to our colleagues, our partners and stakeholders who identify as white Americans. It's really up to them to invite people to the table that does not look like them. And that may seem like a lot of pressure and responsibility, because it is. Because at the end of the day, people like me do not always get career opportunities or chances. Many a times, people who look like me, race is the first thing that people see. And usually we automatically begin to judge people. We have our own biases. When things go through our schema, we judge people. It's true, we do judge people based upon what they look like, what they wear, or what they drive, or what zip code they live in. And so my career has had a variety of challenges. You know, I've had some jobs, I've lost some jobs, and I've always tried to correct my wrongs by doing more right, especially when it comes to serving others. So when I think about the challenges are the opportunities that people like me may not get. The challenges are being excluded, not understanding the value of inclusion. And another challenge would be just making sure that our white allies know how to leverage their power and their influence to help somebody else. So how do we educate everyone, especially those who are not in the same skin as I am? How do we educate other people to say, you know what, it's okay that you don't know it all, but at least you're willing to show up and get the job done. So that's a little bit about my career.
Thank you, Dr. Brown.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's another question. What are the common misconceptions people have about African American? How can we combat those micro misconceptions?
So one of the things about misconceptions about, being Black, and you may have detected this already, but I like to use a little bit of humor. And if there's anything I know about Irvin, I know this about Irvin. I am Black today, y'all. I am Black today. And if you call me tomorrow at this time, I'm still going to be Black. I'm still going to be Black. And so the misconceptions about a variety of races or ethnicities is because we people, Americans, sometimes we are afraid of what we don't know. We are afraid of what we don't know. And I think there's a misconception that says, well, if I don't know this person, then that person must be against me. That person may not like me. And many a times that's not true at all. How do we combat those misconceptions? How do we move forward? How do we, move the pendulum? How do we get to the place where we can just be together in one particular spot? I believe it takes all of us to say, you know what? Let's unpack some of these biases. Let's unpack some of these discriminations. Let's unpack some of the barriers and pull down some of the barriers that people like me or people from other marginalized communities are being faced with every single day. Because the misconception, I think, for some people is if there are some people that are traditionally, not been served or not been seen, it's very hard to understand that particular culture if we haven't taken the opportunity to learn more about that culture. So I think it's important. I think it's important for people to learn outside of their own race, outside of their own ethnicity. Like me, I was educated in white history. I learned all about white history all the way through high school, even to my college level. I learned about white history. So I think it's important that we find a way to talk about the history from our indigenous communities, from our Native Americans who were here long before any of us were, to recognize their sacrifices, their loss of lives, to understand that people were here long before we got here, and to create a space where all voices can be seen, faces can be seen and voices can be heard. We have to create space for all of that to take place. So the misconceptions, I believe, are passed down from generation to generation, and also what we are allowing ourselves to be fed, whether it's through material or through the media. We really have to check our sources sometimes rather than repeating false information.
Thank you so much, Doctor. And let me see. Let me check if we have any questions on the chat. Not yet. Well,
Yeah.
I have some more questions.
Yeah, I'm definitely willing to answer questions if they're in the chat. You know, no question is too small, so feel free to throw them in there.
Okay. All right. Can you please discuss your diversity, equity, and inclusion work in educational settings?
An educational setting. So when I think of DEI work, I believe that all DEI work, whether it's in the educational setting, political arena, socioeconomic status, whether it's about healthcare, looking at the disparities when it comes in education from in all in K-12, I believe before you do anything, you got to have an equity lens. I will say that again. You got to have an equity lens, because if you don't have an equity lens, then I'm convinced you're not going to see me. Hello, somebody. You're not going to see me. And so we live in a state where there are a variety of agencies that don't have an equity lens. A, and B, if you have an equity lens, do everyone know how to use it, right? Does everyone understand how to use an equity lens? Now, I'll give you a little example. This is free. This won't cost you anything, y'all. I'm going to give you a little bit of one-on-one on equity lens. I have on glasses right now. If I take these glasses off, I can see you, but you're very blurry. So I need to put these glasses back on. Equity lenses are the same way I put my glasses on. An equity lens is a tool that I can use with intention, with purpose, with an agenda, so I can see things different and I can see things better. As a Black person, I wake up every day Black. I wake up being othered. So I know what that feels like. But for the dominant voice, for all my white colleagues or those individuals who identify as white, it takes practice every day of putting on an equity lens. That takes practice. And let me just say this, you will never be able to hit a home run when it comes to discussing race or making sure that your equity lens works 100% of the time. No, it's never perfect, but we try and we keep on trying until we get it right. And so in the educational setting, I lean on having an equity lens, making sure that our teachers understand how to have an equity lens, making sure our administrators know how to have one and utilize it effectively, especially in our hiring practices. We need to have an equity lens in our hiring practices, because until we have an equity lens there, we will continue to perpetuate the racist systemic policies that have been embedded within our state for decades. For example, it wasn't until 21 years ago that we decided, when I say we, I'm referring to our politicians, to take out some ugly language that was in our Constitution. Because our Constitution in Oregon really just said, hey, there is no place for Black people in the state or Negroes in this state. That language is legit. It was in our Constitution. So how do I know that? Because we have a history that tells us that about Oregon. So if we're going to make any changes in K-12, if we're going to make any changes in our state agencies, if we're going to make any changes from the governor's office to the secretary of the state's office, whatever office you find yourself in, if we're going to make any changes, we have to start creating spaces to bring in more people that look like me. If we want to maintain the status quo, we'll keep getting the same results. But if we want to change things, undo some things, we got to put on an equity lens so we can see things differently in order to do things differently.
Thank you. I see on the chat that somebody had posted, love to hear the concept of how, oh, it just disappeared on me. How, let's see, where did it go? To hear how can we learn? Oh, where did it go again? I keep losing it here on the screen. Too many things are coming down in messages. Oh, how we can learn. Sign me up. It's just a statement. Somebody want to learn more and they want to be signed up for it. But meanwhile, we have, how do you have an equity lens in a town where 98% of people are white? Until I was an adult, I had no conversation about race.
That is a good question. Let me share something with the individuals on this call that are not people of color. If you identify as white, you need to know that you nor I chose our skin. We didn't choose our parents. We have what we have. And so when you live in a state like Oregon, whose workforce is dominated by white men, I understand when someone says, hey, Irvin, I grew up in Dallas, Oregon. There were no Black people in my classrooms. I didn't have any Black friends. You know, my doctor's not Black. My lawyer's not Black. You know, the person who pumps my gas is not Black. I understand what it feels like when it comes to, you know what, I don't know what to do because I don't have any friends that are people of color. If you're in Oregon, I get it. That's challenging. It's challenging. Yet at the same time, even if someone does not have a network of people of color, the one thing I firmly believe in is educating oneself to do better. For example, reading. Like right now, I'm surrounded by books. I'm going to show you a few books. Mandela's Way. Here is a vintage book, The Negro in the 20th Century. I surround myself with all types of books, The Miseducation of the Negro. And I'm going to share this book with you because it's a favorite in our country right now. It's Critical Race Theory, y'all. So if you're not surrounded with people of color, then you have to find ways to educate yourself. You have to find ways to read about other cultures. You have to find ways to enhance your own learning. Like I mentioned earlier about Robin Deangelo. She's a white woman. She knows how she identifies. And right now she's in the one of the leading leaders when it comes to teaching other white people about what it takes to put on an equity lens. And so I encourage all of my white colleagues to find a way to go deeper in your understanding, find a way to go deeper so you can know what to say, right? Because I don't encourage anyone just to go outside and make friends with people of color. Because if you go to make friends with people of color just so you can learn from them, that's going to be a mess up from the get up. So please don't do that. You want to create authentic relationships, right? Because that's what allyship is. Allyship says, I'm going to get out of my comfort zone to create authentic relationships. So you have to figure out how to do that in the space that you're in. You have to figure out how do you create authentic relationships with people of color and from people from other marginalized communities, you know, whether it's veterans or whether it's the LGBTQIA plus community. You have to find ways to get out of the comfort zone, to challenge your own beliefs. And that's not easy. But as a white colleague, as a white ally, that's a must for you. There's no way around that.
Thank you. And someone has put in the chat, how do we counter current fear mongering and restriction about critical race theory?
That's a good question. So, you know, I had this book up because, you know, I'm definitely a researcher and I've done research on CRT for years now. The one thing I know for certain is this: people are going to be fearful of what it is they do not know or understand. That's common. It's common for every human being to be fearful when they don't know the outcome. So when you think about critical race theory, and I'm not going to go into all the definitions of critical race theory, but critical race theory sits upon several tenets. And one of those tenets, one of those pillars, is really about storytelling and deconstructing racism or racist ideas. If you are a white ally, you are in essence a critical race theorist because you're trying to find ways to dismantle organizational racism. And so when we think about CRT is held in a legal analysis because there's an intersectionality between the law and race that kept women of color from getting to certain positions that they needed to be in. And you can study information from Dr. Crenshaw to Delgado to Bell to Geneva Gay. There's so many people that you can read about because the fear that's out there, some people have legitimate fear, and there is some fear that it is strategic Meaning, let's just create a whole lot of conundrum to create chaos. And usually people just kind of back away. They're like, I don't want to get involved. And I would say in today's culture, if there ever were a time for our white colleagues to get involved, now would be the time. Now would be to sign up, to be an ally, to be a drum major, to be a gap dweller, to do what it takes to make sure that you know how to leverage your power, your privilege, and your influence. It's not easy to do, but it can be done.
Thank you, thank you. And I want to be respectful of everybody's time and your time, and also the staff that sent the questions to ask you. I want to continue with those until somebody put a new question here.
And Ms. Veronica, I would say that there are some questions that I'm seeing. So maybe Nick can help you go through those questions, because I keep seeing several that are passing through. So hopefully Nick can give those
Let me
questions.
see. Most of them are a statement. Okay, here's one.
Yeah, there's one from Joel. He said, in your research, what are the root causes of racist ideologies?
What are the root causes? If we go back to my native land, if my ancestors were stolen from the native land, brought to a new place, did not know the language, did not understand what was going on, but they were brought into a new place, referred to as Negro. Negro, because that's Latin for black. And so when we think about the racist ideologies that came about in this country, we really have to go back and look at our history. We have to ask ourselves, how did we get here? Now, let me share with you why this question could be problematic for some. On one hand, we're going to have the dominant voice, some of our white colleagues that says, you know what, slavery was in the past. Let's just move on and get over it. That's going to be challenging, because when a black person hears that, what they hear is, my history is not important to you. And if my history is not important to you, then that means you don't see me. So when someone says, let's get over slavery, but let's turn around and let's remember our victims from the Holocaust, that's a conflict. You see what I'm saying? If we're going to recognize victims from the Holocaust, then how much more so do we recognize people who were made to be slaves? Recognizing our indigenous communities, our Native Americans. We can't have one without the other. We can't pick and choose our history. So when we look at our racist ideologies, we have to go back to the beginning to understand race, because race is a social construct. What are you saying, Dr. Brown, when you say that? Race is a social construct because it was taught. It was taught to us. It was taught to us by the dominant voice, by the white leaders of America hundreds of years ago, to divide people, to understand that, hey, if you were in this skin, you were considered to be subhuman, illiterate, nothing. That was in our Constitution, right? So black people were not people at all. That's a part of our history. So if we're going to challenge today's racist ideologies, we got to go back in history to see how we got that, right? We got to go back in history. For example, we live in Oregon State. When you walk into the Capitol and you see that mural, you got to ask yourself, how do our Native Americans feel about that mural that we see? When I walk into the Capitol, I don't see any black folks up there. So I feel excluded. When you see that gold man on top of the Capitol with an axe in his hand, we should ask our Native Americans, how do they feel about that? So challenging racist ideology means we have to know what history has done. We have to know what history tells us. Because I know history tells me at one time, Oregon had over 100,000 KKK members. History tells me that. History tells me that Governor Pierce, way back when, his campaign was paid for by the KKK, and he was a card-carrying member. Hello, somebody. That's history. That's in Oregon. That's in the 20s. That is not too far ago. So if we're going to challenge racist ideologies and racist beliefs, and we want to pull down systemic oppression and racism, the first place we got to go to, it's our history, y'all. We got to have some history lessons. In the words of Glenn Singleton, we got to have some courageous conversations about race. And that is where the hard work starts. It's us coming together and having courageous conversations.
Thank
So
you,
that's
Dr.
how I would challenge racist ideologies.
Thank you so much. And it's another question on the chat. Does your DEI strategy include well-being?
Well-being, yes. So let me take a route to answer about well-being. I know that, this is Black History Month. In a few days, Black History Month would be over. Some people will be glad. They're like, oh, let's just move on. But Black history, for those of us that are Black, we're Black every day. So it doesn't matter what month you put it in. Every day I'm going to be Black. And so when I think about DEI and the work that we need to do together, diversity, equity, inclusion, we have to consider those individuals that have been excluded, right? Who is not at the table? Who's not present? Miss Veronica, on that question, can you read the last part of that question one more time for me?
Yes, it should recommend. Oh, yeah. Does your DEI strategy include well-being?
Yeah.
It should.
Okay. So wellness. I know that for this particular month, there's a lot of emphasis on wellness and mental health, and it's been that way for a long time. When I think about who I am and being my authentic self, race plays a huge part in my psychic, meaning how do I feel? If I am going to be my authentic self, I need to be in a place that's going to see all of me. If I'm discriminated against, you better believe that's going to affect how I feel about myself. When I think about women that have been treated harshly, or people that have gone through, sexual harassment, that makes anyone feel less than. When anyone has made to feel othered or not seen, or they've been called names, racist language, or any kind of language that's not their name, that affects who we are. You know that old cliche that says, people can call us any kind of names, words may not hurt me, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That ain't true. That ain't true at all. Yes, sticks and stones can break your bones, but words do hurt. Trust me. Let me be the first person to tell you, words do hurt. And words hurt us because we are people who are put into a place to feel, to know what it's like to have empathy. And so when it comes to wellness, I believe that we have to treat each other the way that we would like to be treated, with dignity, with respect, and with care. And when it comes to having a DEI lens, I believe that a person's race, sexual orientation, impacts their well-being. I believe that. I believe that if a woman is working multiple jobs and she's a single mom and she got 2 or 3 kids, I believe that her wellness is going to be impacted because she is doing so much on her own. I believe that. So if I believe that, we got to be honest with ourselves to bring that type of analysis to the table. Because EDI, equity, diversity, inclusion, it's all of it. It's my race, it's my past, it's my present, it's my tomorrow, it's where I grew up, it's where I'm working, it's my colleagues, it's all of that. Nothing is off the table when it comes to EDI. And what I'm finding out is we got to go beyond EDI. Hello, we got to go beyond EDI. We got to get to that next level. And that's a level where I believe where we can have some conversations that really make all of us uncomfortable, but they push us to grow.
Thank you. There's another question. I would like to know your perspective on Dr. Hubbard and the work on diversity metrics.
The person's name, who did they say, Dr. Who?
Hubbard.
Hubbard. Oh, and racialized metrics?
Yes, I think that's what they're talking about.
I'm not familiar with what the person is saying. So whoever asked that question, if you want to give me more the insight of what you're asking, feel free to, to chime in, because I don't want to say I know something I don't know, because I really want to be clear with my words. So I'm not sure about that question, Ms. Veronica.
I think Dr. Hubbard was a presenter at the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Conference, the statewide, and that's what they're talking about, I think.
Okay, I am not familiar with the matrix that he used or created. That is not something that's a part of my toolkit.
Thank you. Then, okay, let's see. Oh no, that's the last one. Do you see any other one, Nick? After that one?
Jamie Hudson just asked, what were some of your book recommendations to learn about history/culture?
Oh, that's a good question. So obviously I just showed a few, but if someone is really wanting to dive deep in understanding, obviously critical race theory is one. Obviously, it's probably flying off the shelves right now. I think any work that you can get from Michelle Alexander. She writes a lot in regards to mass incarceration rates. What does it look like to have, so many people of color, men of color, brown and black bodies that have been incarcerated? And so anything by Michelle Alexander, anything by Delgado, Geneva Gay, there are some. And what I can also do, if you are a part of Miss Veronica's team, I can definitely share some information with her, a variety of resources. And then I have like a whole list that I can pass on to Miss Veronica, and then she can share that with you.
And there is some recommendation here. Jamie is recommending a Stamp from the Beginning by Abraham X. Kendi.
Yeah. That book is on my table. It's right over there. And so I have a list over 100+ books, whether you're going to read something from him or whether you're going to read something from Ta-Nehisi Coates, whether you're going to read any book that is a historical figure. Obviously, some of our easy go-to books, one is going to be, let me think of one real quick. Let's see. I wish I could go over there and pick them up for you. But Ms. Ron, I can share a list of resources.
Yes, please. And also, somebody here recommended 1619 Project. That is awesome.
Mm-hmm. And see, it sounds like to me a lot of people on this call have done some of the work, and they are doing some of the work. If you identify as a white, and as white as part of your identity, I would definitely encourage you when it comes to, Robin Deangelo's work, because she really speaks a lot in regards to what it's like to be in white skin. And so anything by her, I think, would be helpful.
Then someone, okay, they added Dr. Hubbard was at the statewide DEI, the diversity conference for the state, and also at the previous PG diversity conference in Portland. Thank you for your response.
Thank you. And I mentioned earlier, I threw out Glenn Singleton's name. Glenn Singleton is someone else that I would definitely do some research on. I've had the privilege of attending some of his conferences in the past. And again, he's been at the forefront in this work for years, for a couple of decades plus. And so having courageous conversations about race, he would be someone that I would also do research on.
It's another recommendation here, fiction, Octavia Butler and N.K. Jemisin.
Yeah, those are all good. All good.
Yeah, somebody respond, fantastic. Let's see. And I think I had another question here. Uh, what specific thing can an organization do to ensure it make the best use of a diversity workforce?
So what can an agency do to get the best use for diversity workforce? Is that the question?
Yes.
Well, first off, if an agency wants to diversify their workforce, that's where the homework is. You got to look around you in your own workforce, whether it's this department or another department. You really got to ask yourself, okay, are we diverse here? Is our agency a true representation of the people we're serving? If you look around and in all your cubicles, if all of your colleagues look like you, then that's an easy answer. The easy answer is, okay, we are not a diverse team. We do not reflect the people we're trying to serve throughout the state of Oregon. So now you got to find ways. Now you have to find creative ways to bring on people from a variety of different organizations. For example, I sit on the board with the NAACP. There is a misconception out there that the NAACP is only set up for Black people. That is wrong. I encourage everyone here under the sound of my voice, if you are not a member of the local NAACP chapter in your area, my question is to be, why are you not? Because at the end of the day, that is the place to be connected, to not only understand more about what's happening into the community, but it gives you the opportunity to learn. It gives you the opportunity to be in a space with other like-minded individuals. And so partnering, whether it's with the NAACP or whether it's with the International Dyslexia Association, you have to find ways to partner with different groups and organizations. Even when I think about the groups that are in Portland that work with students, the organization called HALA, it's a mentoring organization led by Eric Knox. Or even I think about Books Not Bards. It's a youth organization led by, Imani Mohammed. So you have to find ways to get out of your circle and connect with a variety of CBOs just to create that partnership. So if the workforce is dominated by the dominant voice white people, you got to find ways to create avenues and pathways to bring in more people that do not look like you. And I can tell you right now, that's a challenge. It's a challenge from one office all the way up to the executive office. Because if I don't see a Black person on that team, that tells me right there something's off. Something's wrong with this team. Because how is it that we can have DEI conversations, but we do not have a complete representation of everybody in the state? If I look around and they're not members from the LGBTQIA+ community, I'm going to question that. I need to see people that are showing up with a variety of abilities and a variety of learning challenges. We need to have a diverse agencies to where we can do our best work. And if we don't have that, we got to start over. That's the truth of the matter, because today I'm still looking for a Black governor. We ain't having a Black governor. I'm still looking at people that are running for office. I'm looking for people that will honestly say, you know what? We need to have more women of color. We need to have more men of color in this space, because at the end of the day, it's how do we create these alliances to make sure that we can do the good work, the hard work, the good trouble, as Representative John Lewis said. We got to find a way to do that together.
Thank you, Dr. Byrne. I'm trying to look at a chat here. So who has a new question? Can you speak in letting go inherent fears for everyone?
Letting go of inherited fears?
Yeah, for everyone.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and think that person asking that question is, how do we let go of things that's being passed on from generation to generation to generation? I think that's what they're saying. Like, how do we let go of fears that have been passed on from another generation? Oh, that person says, yes, that's it. Beautiful.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So
yep.
When you think about inherited fears, if you are, let's just say that you're white. Yes, let's say you're white, and let's say your granddaddy was a KKK member, but those are not your views. But that's a part of your DNA. As a white person, if you find out that your granddaddy was a card-carrying member of the KKK, Don't be embarrassed by that. I would say own it. I would say own it and say, you know what? My granddaddy was in the KKK, but I'm not. And let me tell you why I'm not. That's how you can build on it to show your support in doing things differently. Because the last thing that you want to do is hide the fact that your great granddaddy was a KKK and then someone else finds out, or you say something that's entirely inappropriate. And so fears are passed down. And I'll go one step further. Not only are fears passed down, there's a book called My Grandmother's Hands, and it talks about the DNA that's, with our bloodstream. White supremacy, and that's another whole lesson. I could talk a lot about white supremacy because white supremacy is in our DNA. It's understanding how whiteness has influenced this whole culture. The whole culture. I'll give you an example. You see me today with the bow tie. Now, I wear a bow tie into this space, one, because I like looking nice, but I also wear this particular outfit because I know it is acceptable. I know it's what people appreciate. I know it's what has been permitted as being allowable from the dominant voice. The dominant voice likes things that are well put together. If I were put on a hoodie, the conversation changes. So even bringing that into the space, there are a lot of stereotypes. There are a lot of stigmas. There are a lot of biases that we hold on to. And I believe we have to unpack that, because being an educator, especially an educated Black man, education was never designed for somebody that looks like me. Let me say that again. Education, the system we have in America today, was not designed for Black men, nor was it designed for women. The educational system in America today was designed by white men and for white men. Hello, y'all. That's not brand new. So when we ask ourselves, why do some of our students struggle in a system? They are in a system that was not created for them. If it's our kids of color that are struggling, especially from our kindergartens and our first graders who were not properly tested for dyslexia, or maybe it's a kindergarten that's having a bad day. We label these brown and Black kids and we set them on the trajectory for special education, and that trajectory continues, also known as a prison to pipeline. And so we have to understand what is happening in our system. Our educational system was not designed and it was not created for children of color. If we know that, then we now know what to do things differently and to do things better.
Thank you. And then we have some comments here. Now I just lost it. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, where did it go? They keep on putting a lot of stuff that I keep losing my comments. Well, I will go back to that one. One comment is, don't make assumptions about behavior you see. It may have nothing to do with the color of your skin, whatever the color it is.
Exactly. I believe that hands down. Just because a kindergartner is acting out, that doesn't mean the kindergarten is acting out because it's a brown or Black child. How many of us are parents? Don't we know that all kindergartners act out? All toddlers have a bad day? It's very common. So to make the jump that a child is having behavior problems because of their race is a misconception and it's false. That is not it, okay. But what we see is if an individual, a teacher going through their practicum or their teacher ed classes, if they're not taught on cultural competency, if they're not taught on how to navigate through race relations, if they're not taught how to build relationships with kids that do not look like them, then people will always act out on their fears. They will always do subconsciously those things that they've been taught. And that's why it's so challenging to really change our educational system, because we do not have a system that is completely filled with a lot of educators of color. And I could talk a whole lot about of why we lost educators of color, but let me just drop this into the space. We know about Brown versus the Board of Education. We know what happened with that. A lot of us will say, hey, that was a great thing. But there's some of us who will tell you, Brown versus the Board of Education, it was good, but it also brought some bad things to it. And let me tell you why. Because when our little Black boys and girls walked into the classrooms, our teachers, administrators, and our superintendents who were Black, the laws kept them at the door. So many Black educators lost their jobs during the decade right there with Brown versus the Board of Education. Prior to Brown, there were over 85,000 Black educators. Within a 10-year span of Brown, 35,000 of those educators who were Black, they lost their jobs. If you want to talk about the educational gaps and learning gaps and the learning opportunities, if you want to really understand how we got to be in the mess that we're in today and don't have enough Black teachers, you got to go all the way back to history, Brown versus the Board of Education. That's where we can understand what really happened. Was there some good that came out of that? Yes. There was also some bad that came out of that. And we are still living in the fruit, in the shadow of everything that took place decades ago. Again, it's the history.
Then I think we are almost on time. I got one more question that I want to read because it was sent to us when we sent the flyer. What recommendations do you have for engaging with communities of color?
What recommendations do I have for engaging communities of color?
Yes.
Like, how do we engage communities of color?
Yeah.
Well, one of the recommendations I would have is get involved. Get involved with those organizations that lead communities of color. And I would say this, it's okay to ask a person of color if you don't know. Ask someone, you know what? I really want to get more involved. Can you tell me where one or two agencies that I can get more involved with that help people of color? It's okay to ask. It's okay to ask. It's okay to ask me. I'm okay with sharing information because at the end of the day, that's how we learn. That's how we do better. It's about collaborating. It's a spirit of collaboration and humility of coming together to make sure that we can be stronger together for the better. So how do we build these alliances? It's asking the right questions. That's how we do it.
Well, and then I have a comment here. Even with my experience advocating for my son, he's an autism, ADHD, in an educational system really not designed for him, which gave me some insight here. I still experience that alongside the privilege of being white and getting attention focused on finding solution for him that may not be offered to someone of color.
Yeah.
Not so readily.
Yeah. When it comes to our children who have learning differences, and let's say you are white and your child has a learning difference, yes, I can tell you, you are going to experience discrimination. You're going to experience, your child being left out of some things. That is an experience, and it's not okay. It's not okay for any child because of their learning difference to be held back, to not to be seen, to not to be heard. That's not okay for any child. And it's very difficult for a parent to navigate through that system. And so one of the things that I strongly believe in, I believe that parents are their best advocates when it comes to advocating for their children. Now, you can imagine if you are a parent of color who has a child with a learning difference or a learning challenge, when you add race to it, it just complicates even more so the layers with it. And let's just say the parent is poor. Now you have poverty. That's another layer. So poverty, race, lack of access, all of that plays into, will your child have an educational experience that they will remember, that they can grow in, and that will be the best for them. And I can tell you here in Oregon State, we have a lot of challenges in our educational system. There is no doubt about it. And I'm not exactly sure if we're always on the right road to make it better, because I'm still looking for a lot of Black superintendents throughout the state. I can't find them. I know like one or two. So historically, we are in a state that really does not put a lot of people of color in those leadership positions. Again, that is something we have to be willing to unpack and do differently.
Yes, and there's a last question. Will BLM still keep up the momentum? Can't stop.
I think that was just a comment, right, Ms.
Yes.
Veronica? Okay.
Yes. There was no, at first it was a question and then cannot stop. If they will keep the momentum going.
Well, I will say this, because I think we're almost at the
Out
noon
of
time.
time.
Yeah. So I would say this to everyone that's listening. Whatever your role is in the skin that you're in the role that you play, you really have to find yourself and ask yourself, what is my assignment? If you are in white skin today, you need to hear me say this. There is no shame, no blame, and no guilt in the skin that you're in. The only thing that we have now is the responsibility to do better. My dad says all the time, if you know better, you'll do better. And so I think that's where we meet, finding ways where we can partner together, letting go some of the pettiness that divides us and finding our commonality. What are those things that can bring us together that we can believe in? And only until then can we come to the table to make sure that we can, figure out how to, best solve a lot of the crises that we are currently faced with. And I believe it's at the table of decision making. And until we can have all voices here and all faces represented, if we don't have that, then the work is going to be even more challenging.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Brown. And thank you for everybody that attended, participated, asked questions. I have so many questions coming my way on my phone and on my email. So I will be forwarding those to you and sending reply to those that send them. I just want to say thank you so much for your story, for letting me hear your experience in the world. Thank you for being a veteran and for the work you're doing in DEI and educational for NAACP. And for this, let us recognize our colleagues, our neighbors and friends, and commit to supporting for employment, inclusion, equity, and justice. And that is my closing remark for this event. Thank you, everybody, for attending. And you got the time back. It's 12 o'clock on the dot.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day, and I appreciate being in this space. Be well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.